Welcome to Ciao Bella, hosted by me, Erica Firpo, a travel journalist based in Rome. Each episode of Ciao Bella, I sit down with Italy's creators, contemporary artists and artisans, designers, culinary experts, heritage brands, and innovative aesthetes, and more who are defining and redefining 21st century Italy. Pull up a chair and join in. Hi, welcome back to Ciao Bella. Today I'm in Venice, and I'm not just in Venice, I'm at a very special place, the Peggy Guggenheim Collection. And with me today is Karole P.B.Vail, the director of the Peggy Guggenheim Collection, and the director for Italy of the Solomon R. Guggenheim Foundation. It's so great to be with you today. Thank you for joining me.
It's wonderful that you're here. Thank you so much, and please call me Carol.
I would love to call you Carol. I'm so happy. A lot of my listeners know that my passion is art, and some might know, and some might not know, but a long time ago, I was an intern here at the Peggy Guggenheim Collection, which was perhaps one of my favorite times in my life. So thank you for bringing me back.
Well, it's fantastic that you're here, and it's a wonderful opportunity, so I'm looking forward to our chat.
Thank you. I'd love to talk about the history of why we're here, because I think at this point it's kind of taken for granted. Peggy Guggenheim and Venice go hand in hand. But what brought Peggy here?
Well, it's a long story, and it's true that everyone now many people associate Venice with the Peggy Guggenheim Collection, but it wasn't always the case. Peggy first came to Venice as a young bride with her first husband, Lawrence Vail, who was a writer and artist. And I think she may have come here also when she was a little girl with her father, Benjamin, who died on the Titanic. I mean, when she came here, when she got married to Lawrence, she vowed that she would come back here and would make her home here. But that took a while. I mean, she was born in New York City, as you know, and then she had a gallery in London, and she started to collect, famously one painting a day, as she writes in her autobiography. Then as an American Jew in Europe at the beginning of World War II, she has to leave New York. But in 1942, she opens her museum gallery, Art of this Century, which is a huge success.
I mean, it's not just a huge success. I mean, it's like an international phenomenon, because that was launching Jackson Pollock, if I'm not mistaken.
It was launching Jackson Pollock. At first, Peggy would show her collection of European artists and all the surrealist artists in exile. But then she understood, also thanks to Samuel Beckett, who'd always encouraged her to show the art of her time, that she should be supporting young artists. And Jackson Pollock was one of the young American artists that she supported with a stipend and with his first solo exhibitions at Art of this Century. And it was a very exciting time for the young American artists, because Art of this Century really was the platform for these young artists, both men and women, men in particular, even though Peggy did organize some important and groundbreaking exhibitions devoted to women only, and she did support a few women by giving them solo exhibitions. But by 1947, when the war was over, Peggy really wanted to go back to Europe. And she was invited to show her collection at the Venice Biennale in 1948, which was finally reopening after several years of having been closed because of the world conflict. And the collection is shown in the Greek Pavilion, which was because there was a civil war in Greece, and so the Greek Pavilion was free. And so the Greek consul general offered Peggy the pavilion, and she was delighted. And it was a great success in many ways. I think it was quite shocking as well for much of a public who was maybe used to seeing a more traditional type of work and who wasn't at all aware of what was happening in New York except for the artists. And this was, of course, a great moment for the young Italian artists and the Venetian artists who could at last see what was happening in New York in the 1940s. And these artists would be so influential for young artists in Italy. I think the fact that Peggy came to Italy and came to Venice was a huge breath of fresh air. It also meant hope. It also meant something dynamic, something to look forward to. It really paved the way in many ways for some kind of artistic renewal in Italy. So a very exciting moment in post-war Europe and post-war Italy. And Peggy in 1949, thanks to a friend, finds this rather extraordinary palazzo, an unfinished palazzo from the mid-18th century, right on the Grand Canal, a bit of an aberration because it looks so modernist in my mind.
I agree.
Yes.
I think about this every time I see it.
It is. I mean, it was when Peggy purchased it, it had been inhabited by two other extraordinary women, and most notably the Marchesa Maria Luisa Casati, who was the poet Gabriele D'Annunzio's muse and mistress. And
I didn't know.
Yeah, so he lived across the canal in the famous little Casa Rossa. And Luisa Casati lived here for several years, and apparently she threw the most extravagant parties, and she used to go around naked but with furs over her, and she used to have lambs in the garden, which was perfectly apt because this is Palazzo Venier dei Leoni. And so it had quite a history. I mean, it had been abandoned over the years. It was never finished for a variety of reasons. But then, thanks to these extraordinary women, Luisa Casati, then an English Viscountess, then it fell into disrepair and neglect again because of the war. But then, thanks to Peggy, who finds it, or it's found for her, in fact, in 1949, she realizes this is a perfect place for my collection of modern art. As much as she may have been attracted by a more classical palazzo adorned with frescoes, I think what she was really looking for was a simple kind of building, something not too large, but something which would really suit her collection of modern art.
I mean, I think this is absolutely perfect for what I know of the collection and her personality, because it was like she was able to animate it.
She was able to animate it exactly, and it was perfect also from another point of view because of the outdoor space. And Peggy had always loved sculpture. In fact, the first work of art that she acquires for her collection was a small sculpture by Jean Arc. So sculpture always played a major role here at Palazzo Venier. So we have this garden where she started to place sculpture, and also the terrace on the Grand Canal where she famously placed her Marino Marini sculpture, the Angel of the Citadel. And the first exhibition that she organized here was an exhibition of contemporary sculpture. So all this made for something very attractive for Peggy. She had the perfect space, the kind of prototype of a white cube, if you like, a gorgeous white cube, which was just perfect for her collection and for several bedrooms, of course, because she would always have guests. And in 1951, when her collection is finally established and hung and installed in her home, she begins to open the collection several times a week to the general public, because she strongly believed that the collection was for not just for herself, but it was for the bigger public, for the larger audience. And she really believed that everyone was to be able to enjoy what she had been able to acquire over the years. And so she lives from 1949 to 1979. So the last 30 years of her life are spent in this palazzo.
You know what I love is in talking to people when you're in Venice and you talk about Peggy, a lot of people consider her a Veneziana, which I think is incredible because, I mean, I think sometimes it's hard to become, it's hard to become the culture where you just moved into. And she quickly became part of the fabric of Venice. I'd love to know a little bit more about her relationship with the city.
Well, I don't think in the beginning it was as easy as that.
It's never that easy.
No.
Okay.
I think she was shunned by the more bourgeois and aristocratic members of Italian society. I think many people probably thought, who is this American Jewish lady who's coming here with her collection of modern art? What is she doing in this palazzo, which doesn't have tiepolo or frescoes? Very strange. But then slowly, I think they warmed up to her, and Venetian artists were thrilled to meet her. In fact, some of the very first people that she met were artists, such as Emilio Vedova, Giuseppe Santomaso, and then Edmondo Bacci and Tancredi, whom she took under her wing and gave a stipend to, and also she gave him use of part of a basement for his studio. And because she continued to believe that it was her duty to protect artists, to help artists whenever she could. And that's what she continued to do. And she did continue to acquire art at the biennales that she used to attend on a regular basis. And so eventually I think she became very much part of Venetian fabric. And eventually, in fact, in 1962, she was made an honorary citizen of Venice, and she got all kinds of recognition, formal recognition, and she was known also as the last dogaressa, l'ultima dogaressa of Venice. Also because she was one of the only private people to have a gondola in Venice, and so that was also quite a sight, seeing Peggy being driven around, being gondoliered around in her private gondola.
Does the Guggenheim still have her gondola?
The Guggenheim, unfortunately, does not have her gondola, but it's in the Maritime Museum. Peggy donated it to the Maritime Museum, so if you want to go and see the gondola, it is over there. And in fact, it's in a magnificent setting.
You know, I was looking at the photo of her with one of the oars of the gondola, and I wanted to ask you, because I love how when you come into the Guggenheim from the Grand Canal, there are the two pali that are the two poles that are striped white and kind of like a turquoise celeste blue.
Yes.
And then I saw in the picture that it looked like the oar was striped as well. Was it the same colors?
Yes, I believe they were the same colors. I think turquoise was one of Peggy's very, very favorite colors. And in fact, when I came here just over 3 years ago to take over the directorship of the museum, I wanted to have the pali di casada repainted as I remembered them, and also based on historical photographs.
Now let's talk a little bit about you coming here, because the Guggenheim, so the Peggy Guggenheim Collection opened to the public in 1980. Is that correct? And for this marks the 40th year. So we're in its 40th anniversary. Congratulations! But I know that you have your own personal history with this collection. Would you care to share it?
Of course. So yes, the museum turns 40 this year, let's say officially under the complete aegis of the Guggenheim Foundation. Peggy had in fact given her museum and the collection during her lifetime in the 70s to the Guggenheim Foundation, which oversees the museum here and in New York. But yes, memories. Well, yes, I used to come here as a child, as a teenager.
Can we let everyone know why?
Yes. Yes, so I used to come to Venice into the Palazzo as a child and as a teenager with my parents, and my father was Peggy's son, so I am one of her two granddaughters. So Peggy was my paternal grandmother. So I used to come here on vacation with my parents and sister, or at times even alone.
Was she living here at
Yes.
the time?
So, yes. She always lived in the palazzo. Yes.
So what was it like when she was living here? What's your kind of, what would you call it? That kind of like overall memory. Because like when I think of my nonna's house, I think of her garden, and I think of this blue room that she had, and I think of her cooking for me. I don't know why. That's what I think of.
Yes. Well, I think one generally thinks of maybe cooking and all things fuzzy with one's grandmothers. My other grandmother was completely different. This grandmother, my paternal grandmother, she did cook a bit, but that wasn't really her thing. I don't remember her ever cooking for me or for my parents.
Did you call her Nonna?
No, we had a funny name for her, for my sister and I. We called her Grandmother Dogs, to differentiate her from our other grandmother who didn't have dogs. So we called her Grandmother Dogs. Whereas my brothers and my cousins, I believe, called her Peggy, but we called her Grandmother Dogs.
I like that.
So yes, coming here was a bit out of the ordinary, because you knew that it was a special place, but you had to be careful. At the same time, it was also very loose, incredibly informal, but at times I would feel a bit on edge, because she wasn't quite the grandmother you might want when you're
Like
a girl and a
touchy-feely.
teenager. The touchy-feely didn't really exist. No.
My grandmother wasn't really like that either. My grandmother was.
Are you talking about your paternal?
No,
one?
my nonna actually. She was very very fashion. Like she was not. I used to love my one of my high school friends had a grandmother named Bubby who would give us each $5, and she would make cookies for us. And she would, like every time you came to our house, she did stuff for you. My nonna was like, let's go shopping, or she was like, let's go to an art museum.
Right.
It was not. It was a little bit. It wasn't quite as touchy-feely. So I think I kind of understand.
Yes. But one of my best memories, in fact, is going with Peggy, or with Grandmother Dogs, in her gondola, and going around the canals. That was really quite special, because I think one of the best ways of getting to know Venice is on the water. I mean, Venice is all about the water. And so then you can access certain places that you wouldn't normally access if you were on foot. and you can access them just gliding through these small canals, and that was rather special. But then what she would do is that at times she would absolutely insist that we stop at a church, and then she would stay in the gondola, but I would have to go inside the church, look and see what was inside. She might give me a coin, I don't know, 50 lira or 100 lira, to have a bit of light, and she would say, make sure you see the Carpaccio, make sure you see the Tintoretto, the Tiziano, and then I'd have to come back and report on what I'd seen. So a kind of informal education, and Peggy's education, in fact, had been very informal, and she loved Renaissance art, and I think she was particularly fond of Venetian art and of Carpaccio in particular. And so that was quite an education. I mean, being able to go around the canals, just looking at the buildings, gliding through the canals, and stepping out onto the campi and going into the churches where, more often than not, there was no one at all. It was really pretty dark and damp. But then I would put in my little monetina inside the box, and the light literally would appear, and something astonishing would appear in front of my eyes. Not something that I necessarily always liked, especially being a very young girl or a teenager. But those are fond memories, and memories that are important.
Are there any pieces of art here? When you were a child or growing up, did you have a favorite piece here?
Well, more than favorite piece, I know there were some pieces that I really didn't like and which were terrifying. But I always loved the early Cubist works by Picasso and Braque. But some pieces I found really terrifying, which were the surrealist pieces.
I was going to say.
Because a lot of the rooms now, which are galleries, were bedrooms with these 4-poster beds. But there were paintings in there, like a Max Ernst or Paul Delvaux, and we have got this magnificent painting by Paul Delvaux, which shows these tree trunks, but then then with the heads and body of a woman who's Delvaux's own wife, but with these huge black eyes covered in mascara and cord, and I felt that they were always peering over me, and it was rather difficult to sleep in a room with these extraordinary looking figures, half woman, half tree, peering over you, and it was difficult to get to sleep. And it was even more difficult if you were sleeping in a room with a Max Ernst painting.
I could only imagine.
Yes, so that wasn't always very, very, very relaxing. But yes, some of my favorite works otherwise have generally been, I must say, yes, the early works by Picasso, much of a sculpture. And then I always found it very exciting to see these Jackson Pollock paintings, because they seemed at the time, and when I was very young, they seemed so easy to emulate, and I thought, I can do that. And then, of course, many years later, I realized, well, no, maybe it's not that easy. And my goodness, yes, what an extraordinary painter, and he does deserve to be considered possibly, the greatest American painter of a 20th century, certainly one of the seminal ones. Mm-hmm.
That is pretty cool. Those are very great memories. Have you ever tried, out of curiosity, to sleep in the room with the Ernst and the surrealist paintings, just to see if you could get through the night now as an adult?
No, but maybe I should try.
It could be kind of an interesting, the Guggenheim Sleepover series.
Yes. I'll have to get a sleeping bag and just sneak in at night.
Exactly.
Yes, yeah.
Now, actually, let's bring it to the museum opens in 1980, and your career instead. I know that you were telling me you grew up in France. You studied in Florence, and you were in New York as well, and now you're here. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yes, so I grew up in France, finished school in France, university in England. Then I came to Florence, and I stayed there for many, many years, and I worked for an extraordinary publishing company and documentation center called Centro D, DI. And then I went to New York, and I was there for about 25 years, and I was a curator at the Guggenheim Museum. I focus on early 20th century European art. I did a lot of work, rather ironically, in light of my career now and of my family connection. I did a lot of work around the history of the Guggenheim Museum and of its founding director, who was a woman artist called Hilary Bay, who was Solomon Guggenheim's advisor and founding director of the Guggenheim Museum, and it was known as the Museum of Non-Objective Painting. And it is thanks to Karole P.B.Vail, as far as I'm concerned, that the Guggenheim Museum exists today. Without her, the Guggenheim, as we know it today in the collection, I don't think would exist. So it's very interesting that you have these two women, Karole P.B.Vail, New York, and Peggy Guggenheim, who somehow, as far as I'm concerned, form the pillars of the Guggenheim Foundation. And their collections and their ideas in many ways complement each other. P.B.Vail was very much influenced by spirituality. She really believed in the spiritual in art, and in fact the collection is very strong in works by Kandinsky. She was an artist herself, and we know that Peggy wasn't an artist. Peggy didn't have the same kind of spiritual leanings that P.B.Vail had. I think she was a lot more pragmatic. I mean, she was very keen on building a comprehensive collection of modern art, thanks to many of her enlightened advisors, such as Marcel Duchamp, of course, or the British historian Herbert Reed. Even though, as far as I'm concerned, there are a few lacunae in the collection, but no collection is perfect, and that's also why the collection is so special. Because even though it does focus very successfully on the major strands and movements of the 20th century, nonetheless, I think there are a few gaps here and there. You might wonder, where are all the women artists? But that's a big question, and maybe we don't have time to talk about that today. But it is, on the other hand, as I was mentioning earlier, Peggy did support women artists by organizing two major exhibitions devoted to women artists. She supported other artists such as Irene Rice Pereira, who's an American abstract artist who was given a solo show at Art of this Century. And we were very lucky a few years ago to be given a work by Irene Rice Pereira, in fact, in honor of Philip Rylance, the first director of the PGC. And I'm very glad, in fact, to say that right now we have on the view quite a spectacular work by Grace Hartigan, who was part of that group of women, including Lee Krasner, Elaine de Kooning, Joan Mitchell, and Helen Frankenthaler. So
and you have a Joan Mitchell in that?
That is part of a Schulhoff collection.
Yes.
So that is a separate collection.
Okay.
So, but we mustn't forget that Peggy was also collecting at a certain time when, unfortunately, many women were not being looked at quite as much as one might have hoped. Even though she included women artists not sporadically, but not so infrequently. Karole P.B.Vail, if I may add, was very, very supportive of women artists, also because she was an artist herself, and so I think she understood how difficult it was for women artists.
So you were the curator of the Guggenheim in New York for 25 years, and then 3 years ago you returned to Venice. So when you were just speaking, you were mentioning that there was a Grace Hartigan now hanging, and I wanted to ask you about that because, as I mentioned, I worked at the Guggenheim and at the PGC, and I remember certain things in certain places, and I've come back over the years, and certain paintings were in certain places always, and now there's a bit of a change, which is like a breath of fresh air. It's lovely to see, and I see that there's a new curatorial direction, thanks to you, obviously, and I'd love to hear about that.
Yes, well, as a former curator, I mean, that's still one of my favorite activities. So whenever I have the chance, I want to move paintings around because I think it's important to find new relationships between the works of art, and I think it's also important to be able to show the works of art which are not often on view. You have to get every object its due. Of course, some are many of the works vary in quality. Visitors want to see certain works, but I do think it's important as part of our educational mission to show what else we have in the collection, what Peggy was also, what she was collecting for the most part. So whenever we can, we move objects around. Then sometimes like many institutions, we lend works to other exhibitions. So there are a few works which are traveling, which are not on view. Some of them may be in need of conservation. Some may just need to be put away because they can't be exposed to light too often. Right now, unfortunately, because of the COVID situation and because of restricted access to the museum, and in order not to have so many people congregate around works of art, we've had to eliminate a few works and just take a few more works off the walls. Okay. Because if not, there are just too many people, and we really have to try and maintain the social distancing between people because we have to make sure that everyone feels safe in the museum. That is important.
So I know that. So that I didn't realize that. So there are a little bit less work on the walls. There's a lot of really good stuff. So it's kind of funny to say that. But I know that you reopened in June.
Yes.
And it was just a few days. So one of the things that I think I would love to talk about is just the educational aspect of the Peggy Guggenheim Collection, because as I mentioned, I spent the good part of 2 years here specifically for I had this thing. I was writing a piece on Robert Gober, and then I wanted to work more in contemporary or modern art, and I applied. It was great, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about the resources that you have to academics, the resources that you have to your guests. Letting people know this isn't, because you mentioned this is also education. It's not simply just a great art gallery. This is a great resource for anybody who is studying art to come here, and whether they do a studentship, a fellowship, an internship, and it's a great resource for, I think, people that that just assume. Venice is a great city. I love the history of Venice. I love all of Venice. I love St. Tiepolo. I love a lot of things about Venice, but it's also really fun to kind of decontextualize Venice and see this contemporary and modern art.
Absolutely, that is important. And yes, our mission is educational. That is the mission of the Guggenheim Museum. And I think one of our greatest, resources is in fact this internship, which was established 40 years ago. So the internship, the Guggenheim internship at the Peggy Guggenheim Collection turns 40 years old this year as well.
Oh, goody.
We didn't think we were going to be celebrating like this. So, but we have to celebrate nonetheless. And so, so many students and interns have come through the Peggy Guggenheim Collection. And I think it's a remarkable program, which unfortunately during lockdown was cut back drastically. We didn't have students. We just had a couple of students who were here to somehow oversee and to help out, and then we had some who weren't then able to go home so easily, but then we worked with them nonetheless remotely, and they helped us to produce podcasts and videos so that we continue to offer activities online to our audience, because we thought that was very important. We can't lose touch with our public. They can't come here, so we have to offer them something online. So we developed a whole program of digital activities. And we also launched our new website in April, and I think we were very excited and proud about that. Otherwise, yes, we have a library which our students and interns can use, and then by special appointment you can also come to the library if you need to do any research. Yes.
To let everybody know, the interns, it's a pretty, I would say, 360 internship in this sense. You're when I was here, and I'm sure it's the same. There was. As I mentioned, I cleaned the sculpture fondly in the front, very delicately. I know how to clean a sculpture by Manson. I'm very proud of that fact. You're cleaning the space, which is important, very, very important. I think you're cleaning the artwork. You're not cleaning the paintings, but you're cleaning the exterior spaces. I was part of a whole, as I mentioned, the Morandi show that they had many, many years ago, Hanging It, which was an incredible experience for me in the sense that I assisted the preps that came in, and so I learned the aspect of the behind the scenes of putting together a show on a more hands-on,
right,
which I thought was really fascinating. And then there's publication. You have interns that are doing digital and social media. I think it's a really 360 internship.
It is, and I think that's its strength, because you really do put you do a bit of everything. But you do also have to guard the galleries a bit. Unfortunately, the interns right now, they can't give tours. Because of our restrictions, but hopefully at some point we'll be able to resume those. But I think that's why students enjoy this internship so much and why it's so important, because you really get to live the life of the museum on a daily basis. You get to understand somewhat how to run a museum and how things work.
I think you understand it completely hands-on. And as I came back and I said, I'm going to see some old friends, because when you do guard paintings or guard a gallery, the paintings that are there really, really become part of your life. They become your family. At least that happened to me. And so when you're living a gallery 24/7, and the logistics of it, it's a beautiful experience coming back.
Yes.
I'd love to know what we see for the future for PGC.
Well, I want the PGC to become stronger and stronger, obviously. I want to be able to resume our full exhibition program. We've had to, unfortunately, cut back on our programming because of expenses, which is very sad. So right now, just one major exhibition a year. I'm very keen on conservation, and I think that's something also crucial for Venice, because Venice is such a delicate reality, and we really have to take care of the whole city. And so I really want to need to take care of the building of the collection in the best possible way. And so I'm thinking of new ways of conservation labs, because what with climate change, water rising, etc., you can never be too careful. So conservation is absolutely crucial. It's also a fascinating science. I think that we should all be more and more interested and curious about conservation and how to preserve your heritage. And so my main objective right now is really to take care of this extraordinary heritage and to ensure that it will be here for the next 100,000, 2,000 years if possible.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to telling my grandchildren to come to visit. Thank you so much for your time,
Thank
Karole.
you very much.
Hey, listeners. Thanks again for joining me in Venice at the Peggy Guggenheim Collection. You can visit the museum at www.guggenheim-venice.it and on Instagram at Guggenheim_Venice. And you can help support it. And with that, I'll leave you with a few words from Karole P.B.Vail.
So a few months ago, we did launch a fundraising campaign because, for 3 months we were completely closed. And we lost a lot of revenue because we rely so much on our ticket entrances, on sales from the shops, and also events. And then, even though we did reopen in June, we've only been opening a few days at a time, and so that means a loss of revenue, and we have many more expenses because we need so many more guards, security guards, in order to protect everyone. So we've had to launch a fundraising campaign, and so I would just like to appeal to everyone who loves the PGC to help us. Every amount is most welcome. Just like what Barack Obama did. He appealed to everyone, even by giving $1, $5. Everything can work, and then you can somehow feel that you're really participating in the life of this museum. So if everyone can contribute whatever amount they feel they can do, I would be eternally grateful.
How can we find where to contribute? How do we do that?
So you can go to our website, and it's very easy, and just in 3 clicks you can donate to the Peggy Guggenheim Collection. So it's very easy. We've made sure to simplify the whole process.
Okay, well, thanks for sharing that with us, and I hope
Thank
everybody
you.
takes a chance to look at the new website and do those 3 clicks.
Thank you so much. That's great. Okay.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Ciao Bella. If you'd like to know more about today's guest, please visit ciaobella.co and click on the podcast link, or go directly to ciaobella.co/podcast. Want more Italy? You can find all my episodes on iTunes and Spotify and Stitcher. When you have time, subscribe to iTunes and rate the podcast. What are you waiting for? And if you want to be part of the podcast, email me or DM me your Italy questions. To learn more about me and my work, go to my website, ericafirpo.com, and follow my Italy adventures on Instagram at ericafirpo. Ciao, Bella! And a very big thank you and hug to Massimiliano Yonta and Disc to Disc Studios, the producers of Ciao Bella, who continue to make me sound and feel great.